Welcome back to the channel, where we analyze cartoons to avoid dealing with our own mounting existential dread. Today, we're diving into Sousou no Frieren, or how it was adapted to the English-speaking world, Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, a show that asks the daring question, what if The Lord of the Rings ended? But instead of sailing into the West, Gandalf stayed behind to babysit two traumatized teenagers while being a socially stunted elf. It's a whimsical, melancholic masterpiece about the passage of time, but if you look past the beautiful sunsets and the Zoltrack spamming, you realize it's actually a case study in precocious maturity, the psychological phenomenon where children are forced to grow up way too fast because the adults in their lives were either dead, dying, or busy fighting literal demons. Enter Fern and Stark, the two most competent, powerful, and emotionally repressed kids in fantasy history, or at least in the Frieren universe. While most teenagers are worried about TikTok trends or skincare, these two are busy perfecting the art of killing god-tier entities while feeling absolutely nothing inside. We have to start with Frieren herself, the ultimate hands-off parent. Frieren's approach to childcare is essentially throwing a child into a library for 9 years and then being suppressed when that child grows up to be a human calculator with a grudge. This leads us to our first psychological concept, parentification. This occurs when the traditional roles between a caregiver and a child are reversed. In a healthy world, the adult provides emotional stability, and the kid gets to be a chaotic mess. In Frieren's world, Fern is the one making sure the elf actually wakes up before noon, eats something other than manna-flavored air, and doesn't get scammed by a merchant for a potion that dissolves clothes. Which, let's be real, we all want one. Fern didn't just learn magic, she learned how to be the designated driver for an immortal being who has the time management skills of a goldfish. It's funny to watch, sure, but from a developmental standpoint, it's a disaster. Fern's maturity isn't a personality trait, it's a survival mechanism. When your parents die and your savior is a woman who thinks a 50-year nap is a quick snooze, you don't get the luxury of a rebellious phase. You just get chores and the weight of the world on your shoulders.
この下品な薬買った時に私返品しろって言いましたよ。
Now let's talk about Fern, the girl who treats a magical duel like she's filing taxes. Boring, efficient, and soul-crushingly fast. Fern is the poster child for hyper-vigilance. Because her early life was defined by the loss of her family and a looming shadow of Hyder's death, she's constantly on. She doesn't just watch for monsters, she watches for changes in mood, shifts in the environment, and any sign of instability. This is why she's so terrifyingly good at detecting mana. In psychology, hypervigilance is often a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder where the brain stays in a state of high alert to prevent future trauma. For Fern, being perfect and reliable is the only way she ensures she isn't abandoned again. If she's the best mage, Frieren needs her. If she's the most responsible, she's indispensable. But this comes at a cost, her effective flattening. Have you noticed how Fern has approximately 2 facial expressions? There's stoic disappointment and slightly more intense stoic disappointment. This isn't just her being tsundere for the plot, it's a defense mechanism. By suppressing her emotional range, she protects herself from the highs and lows that led to her initial trauma. She's viewing Stark's normal teenage reactions, fear, excitement, horniness, as disgusting or childish because she's subconsciously jealous that he's allowed to feel them. She's a child who skipped the child part and went straight to middle-aged accountant who hates her coworkers. I mean, like you. When she calls Stark a pervert for simply existing, it's not just a gag. It's her brain struggling to process the fact that someone her age hasn't completely murdered their own spontaneity yet. She's looking at Stark through the lens of a compulsive caretaker, someone who feels they must maintain order because the alternative is chaos, and chaos is what took her family away.
あの雲さ。すみません。なんでもないです。
Then we have Stark. Oh, Stark. If Fern is the parentified child, Stark is the victim of conditional regard. Growing up in a village of warriors where your only value is your strength, Stark was the failure. His father didn't see a son, he saw a defective weapon. This led to a massive inferiority complex, a term coined by Alfred Adler to describe people who compensate for feelings of inadequacy by either overachieving or, in Stark's case, living in a constant state of, I'm about to get hit. Stark is arguably one of the strongest warriors in the world. He literally cleaved a canyon in half because he was bored. Yet he genuinely believes he's a coward. Why? Because his trauma told him that if he isn't perfect, he's nothing. Stark's fear isn't a lack of courage, it's a physiological response. Every time he faces a dragon, his brain isn't seeing a lizard, it's seeing his brother's disappointment and his father's cold eyes. He suffers from imposter syndrome on a tectonic scale. He thinks he's faking it, even while he's tanking hits that would turn a normal human into a fine red mist. His precocious maturity is different from Fern's. While Fern grew up to be an adult, Stark grew up to be a protector who doesn't realize he needs protecting. He's the guy who will stand in front of a dragon to save a village, will apologize for taking up too much space while doing it. His relationship with Aizen was built on a shared language of tough love, which is just a fancy way of saying, we don't talk about our feelings, we just hit things until the feelings go away. Stark is a Ferrari that thinks it's a broken tricycle because nobody ever taught him how to read the speedometer.
いいって。慣れてるから。
本当にすみませんでした。
When you put Fern and Stark together, you don't get a normal romance. You get two broken clocks trying to tell the right time by leaning on each other. Their relationship is a classic example of co-regulation. Because neither of them had a traditional emotional upbringing, they have to learn how to process feelings by bouncing them off the other person. Fern learns that it's okay to be annoyed and loud, and Stark learns that his presence has value, regardless of his combat performance. However, because they both have the emotional maturity of a decorative shrub, this manifests as a lot of pouting, misunderstood gestures, and Frieren looking on with the blank stare of someone who has lived for 1,000 years and still doesn't understand why humans like to hold hands. They are essentially trauma bonding, not in the toxic, abusive sense, but in the sense that their shared history of loss and warrior-class expectations makes them the only people capable of understanding one another. Fern needs someone she can't manage, and Stark needs someone who won't discard him. Their maturity is their armor, but their interactions are the cracks in that armor. Every time Stark buys Fern a gift and she reacts with the warmth of a refrigerator, they are actually navigating the attachment theory minefield. Fern is avoidant. She keeps people at a distance to avoid pain. Stark is anxious. He wants approval and fears being a burden. It's a match made in psychological purgatory, and yet it's the most wholesome thing on screen because they are trying. They are two kids who were told they had to be legends, finally realizing they're allowed to just be teenagers who are bad at talking to each other.
Sky.
So there you have it. Sousou no Frieren isn't just a show about magic. It's a show about how hard it is to grow up when the world keeps asking you to be a hero. Fern is a miniature adult who needs to learn how to play, and Stark is a legendary warrior who needs to learn how to breathe. Together, they might just manage to have a normal conversation by the time Frieren finishes her next quest in 2084. What do you think? Is Fern being too hard on Stark, or does he genuinely need a professional supervisor at all times? Is their maturity impressive or just depressing? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, unless you're an elf, in which case, just come back in 50 years and see if I've posted anything new. See ya!